Hello fellow data friends. What if you could start each game with more money and more loyalists, and I had the data to prove it? But how can we achieve such a feat? In the moddable game files is a line about a grace period for radicals and loyalists at the beginning of the game. That grace period lasts 2 years and is a scaling modifier. But why is there such a grace period in the first place? I will tell you what I think, but I cannot prove it. Victoria 3 is a complex simulation. Whenever you start a new game, you will notice some differences to any previous game starts. When a new game starts, the game runs through a couple of iterations to get the simulation running, but not enough to start at an equilibrium. If you want such an equilibrium, you need more iterations before starting, which means longer loading times. And having slight differences each game might also be desirable by itself. Such a grace period for radicals and loyalists makes sure no country is punished or rewarded for the somewhat random simulation start. But we don't know how exactly the scaling is actually done. Let's investigate. When the standard of living for a pop changes, then 6% of its population becomes more radical. This is the base value before any modifiers. This is a clergyman pop in Kazan at game start, and it will demote. It has an accepted culture and religion, so when we look at the modifiers in Kazan, they get 35% less radicals from changes in standard of living. This means they should get 483 radicals once they demote without the grace period effect. They are 1 week away from demoting. They gained 49 loyalists because of high government rating. They increased to 98 loyalists before the end of the week, so the high government rating hit this pop again. Now they demoted and the loyalists decreased to 61. So we lost 37 loyalists instead of the expected 483. This means we got only 7.6% of the normal radicals due to changes in standard of living. 2 years in the game have 104 weeks. We are about 8 weeks into the game, so 8 divided by 104 is about 7.5%. So the changes in standard of living in the first 2 years scale linearly from 0% to 100. That sounds exploitable. Let's have some fun with this. I will use Russia as a test subject. To gather proper data, I have created 6 test saves on which I will run different scenarios and observe the development of radicals and loyalists from 1936 to 1940. I also modded the tooltip here, so it shows the change of radicals for the last 5 years. The first scenario is just doing nothing. We need a baseline for the natural development, which we can compare our actions to. Because if our actions lead to worse results than doing nothing, why do it? And here are the results in a scatter plot. On the x-axis are the loyalists in million people, and on the y-axis are the radicals. There are 2 outliers, but we can see a cluster on the right. Next scenario. I will do nothing until 1838, then erase taxes to very high. I notice at this point that Russia starts at low taxes. This will likely make any effect more pronounced than for countries with normal taxes, but it will change nothing about the general results. So I just continued using Russia. Raising taxes after 1838 means there will be no grace period, and we get an idea for the normal effect of changing to very high taxes. The new results are in yellow. We get a cluster with a minor outlier. In general, we have about 800,000 less loyalists and about 4.5 million more radicals. Now it is time for the interesting stuff. What exactly happens when we raise the tax level to very high right at the beginning of the game? Then, the biggest impact of the tax changes will be at the beginning of the grace period, and the grace effect is still very strong. The new results are in orange. We got 1 outlier, but the cluster has about 3 million less radicals than raising taxes in 1838. So better results, although we had very high taxes for a longer period. The outlier does not look nice, but remember I did nothing. If you see a disaster coming, think about lowering taxes to avoid plus 100% radicals during bad times. This looks already promising, but we can do even better. Raising taxes at game start means we demote a lot of pops during the grace period. But if we remove the taxes in 1838, the standard of living will increase for many pops without any grace effects. Thus, we should get more loyalists than in the baseline scenario, right? The new results are in grey. We got a clear cluster on the right with about 1 million more loyalists than in the baseline scenario. And we got 2 years of very high taxes. There's one bad outlier on the left, but again, if you see a disaster coming, do something. But still, in 5 of 6 scenarios, we get more money and more loyalists. There's no drawback, so there's no reason to not do this every game. But we won't stop at these amazing results, because we haven't touched consumption taxes yet. I want to measure the impact of consumption taxes without the grace period, so I will do nothing until 1838. Then I stop suppressing the intelligentsia to get more authority and add consumption taxes for grain, services, nice chairs and nice clothes. These had the best income authority ratio during the first trial run, so I just use these taxes every time. The new results aren't purple, so using consumption taxes is worth than doing nothing, but mostly we are maybe missing like 250,000 loyalists. That is not very much for Russia. But we also need to remember that Russia starts at low taxes. So with other countries, that will likely be a bit more impactful. But I used 900 authority for consumption taxes. That is a lot. The huge number of peasants in Russia is probably another reason. Peasants do not consume much from the national market due to their subsistence farming. So a lot of peasants are paying a small amount each due to this. But many countries have a lot of peasants in 1836. This should be somewhat comparable. In conclusion, consumption taxes do not seem to have a lot of impact on the radicals compared to the overall tax level, especially since they don't have other lasting debuffs like higher taxes. I tried one last scenario to get even better results than our grey seesaw scenario. This time I used very high taxes in 1836 and I added consumption taxes for grain, services, nice chairs and nice clothes. Then, in 1838, we returned to the original tax level, which means low taxes and only liquor consumption taxes. So we use consumption taxes to demote even more people during the grace period, who can then promote again after 1838. The green points are the newest results. And indeed, we can improve the results by adding consumption taxes in 1836 and removing them in 1838. There is a clear impact, but it's still not very strong. Maybe 200,000 loyalists again. You can probably also keep the consumption taxes in 1838 and you will likely lose 200,000 loyalists compared to the grey scenario. In conclusion, consumption taxes do not have much impact on the radicals. Don't be afraid to use them. And when you raise taxes at the start of the game and reduce them again in 1838, you will have more loyalists and more money regardless of your starting country. I don't see any drawbacks to this. Have fun using this strategy and please leave a comment about your experience. I would love to get some feedback on this. If you want to know which AI mod has the best economic performance after 15 time lapses, click on the top video. Thanks a lot for watching, please consider liking and subscribing.